Welcome to the Bad Boss Brief. I am Stephanie Perillo.
And I'm Eugene S. Robinson.
And we are at episode 77. And we are
Secret 77.
Yeah.
It's a song by Bad Brains called Secret 77. So
okay. I did not know that. Thank you for the music trivia. That's always nice to start a show with.
All right.
It's called We Are Not Algorithms. And the reason I came up with this was I've really been thinking a lot about how we as a culture are really enamored of the idea that everything is a formula.
Yeah.
And I actually wrote about this in my Substack last week, and I was talking about it more in terms of spirituality and sort of intentionality and how we come to think of the divine as some sort of vending machine. If I do X, then Y. But what I wanted to talk about today was what happens when that is applied to the workplace. What happens when leaders or even workers apply that same sort of formulaic thinking to the workplace? And, how does that work out for them?
Yeah, there's a certain kind of weird rigidity to it. And that's why everybody's so excited about AI, because AI actually sort of attempts to think like a person does by making leaps. And these are not very rigid leaps, they're kind of intuitive and they come from vibes. This is kind of creepy when, AI sometimes combined with robotics and you see these entities speaking and furrowing their brow with concern, and you believe that it's a real measure of humanhood. In fact, sadly enough, almost on cue, there are people, I'm being generous by calling them people. There are guys out there who are falling in love with AI, like love. Like, this is not a machine. Clearly, there's the ghost in the machine that people talk about. That's what they've embraced. So I think there's something sort of refreshing about the non-lockstep nature of this kind of new computer language. But I don't think it works with real people. And I think that we'll find out in short order that it will not work because we are the permanent and perpetual X factor. Oh, look, we're going to have a perfect place. You'll never go hungry. You never have to work. You never have to do anything. Yeah. But what's that apple over there? Recognize that story? Yeah, I'm sure. And that is the saving grace, I think, of all of these systems will be that humans, best intentions aside, will find some way to screw it up. And that's kind of what's really perfect about us. I've never had a lockstep situation actually work well. And you see in war, which we're in the midst of right now, it doesn't work well either. Asynchronous warfare is what we have and what we've had since World War II ended. And you just can't, rigidity is not going to win it. So,
but I think also what is interesting and sometimes confounding is that people will work in opposition to their best interests.
Yeah.
And that is inexplicable, right? So for example, in the personal realm, I sometimes call it throwing away happiness with both hands. Right? And you see this a lot with people who struggle with some sort of addiction. Right? Like they can have a clear choice. You can go into treatment, deal with your addiction, get some help, or lose your family, your health, your job, and live on the streets. And they'll be like, I don't know, let me think about it.
What were those choices again? Go through those choices. Okay.
So that happens in the personal realm, but I think you can also look in the political realm, right? So you are safely ensconced in Spain. I am in the United States of America. And you could look and say, all right, so if you had a choice as a citizen to vote for a political entity or president or group who would make your life easier by providing universal access to healthcare, affordable childcare and housing and, education, make sure that you are healthy, that there is a basic income, that your children have vaccines and great education, or you can give all the money to a cabal of rich people who are also pedophiles. You would think that would be an easy choice.
Well, I mean, since I've got MAGA in my pocket with all of the people I know who are MAGA minded who take jujitsu, I can tell you that honestly, what they believe is that things were so bad. There's an old Latin expression about that I think addresses the cure being more dangerous than the cancer, and in this instance, they were ginned up by various news sources, let's say that, into believing that things were so incredibly dire that they had to make this dire choice. And now, according to statistics and polls, only 27% of the people who felt that way before still feel that way. The attack on Iran has shaken people loose. So we are doing a bit of asynchronous thinking collectively as a nation, where you have, Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens, Ben Shapiro, and some other names of right wingers I don't know. So it's a civil war inside MAGA, and it's of course a war. I mean, we can just dispense with this whole United States of America thing, but in the end, what we've seen, historically speaking, is that you can sit in smoking rubble. And what is that great line, from Batman, where Heath Ledger says, even if the plan is horrible, people are happy if you stick to the plan. But as soon as you deviate from the plan, even if it's a better choice, everybody loses their mind, or something to that effect, right. Which, if you're a right-minded person, maybe drives you a little bit crazy. But
well, and I think it's interesting to look at. I think there's two sort of opposing forces. One is what we talked about, the inherent unpredictability of human nature, that we often don't work in our best interests, that we move towards chaos or greed or fear or things that that not everything we do makes intellectual, rational sense. On the other side, I think looking at what is the purpose that algorithms serve right now in our world, like the actual, how are they working in the universe and in our day-to-day lives. And I do think that there is a scarily accurate predictive model. So I can go onto a shopping site and it can, or any kind of site, and it can fairly accurately predict the next movie I want to watch or the next, skincare item I'm going to want to buy. And there's a question of like, how much am I being manipulated by that? And I think, one of the things I think about, I've worked in and around advertising and marketing for many decades. And I remember at least 20 years ago, maybe like 15, learning about technology that they were testing in like grocery stores that would track the eye movement of consumers.
Yep.
And I remember being really creeped out by that. Like the way we're using this biometric information, not in service of greater health or safety, but just to figure out how do I get this person to buy this bottle of detergent rather than this one. And I think understanding the level to which algorithms and data collection have been incorporated into every aspect of our lives for monetization.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I don't think people think about this. Somebody, a computer security guy, he just sold his company to, I think, Oracle or some such thing, made millions of dollars. He said to me, what people don't seem to realize is that every time you use your phone or your computer, it's like standing up in a movie theater, turning on a flashlight. Like, it's not like when you, in 1968, when you could actually successfully make a prank call, right? Everything you do now is slave to your IP address, unless you're using, a VPN. And even those VPNs can be tracked because suddenly it comes up that a very private network that somebody is using VPN. That's why there are 368,000 IP addresses that have been uncovered in America as routinely downloading child pornography. That's like 368,000 in America. that the police know about. This is known to them, but they don't have the resources to chase all these guys. So out of those 338,000, I think they're actively looking at 8,000. Yeah, you don't have to be a math genius to know that that's a lot of, but they know who these people are. These people figure, hey, they haven't caught me yet, so I guess I'm fine. No, you're not fine. It's just a manpower issue. Every time you do something, you use your card, your phone listens to you. If you said that 5 years ago, people would say you were crazy. They've already been busted for that being the case, right? The iPhones, we're sorry, we didn't, we're just data gathering, and I'm sorry, because all of a sudden you're talking about wheelchairs, and then you see ads for wheelchairs. This is not coincidental. Right. This awesome power of the internet is not for us.
But I think there's something that's interesting. So Tressie McMillan Cottom, who I'm a huge fan of, talks often about the fact that the future is not decided. This notion that AI, this behemoth, is unavoidable, that it will be running everything, that agentic AI will be controlling every single aspects of our lives and interactions. She said that has not happened yet, and that is not predestined. The notion that there's no point in fighting it, there's no point in questioning it because it is already preordained is another trick, right? And, if you think about it, and of course, we're of an age where we remember having to remember phone numbers because you didn't have mobile phones, which is, I think probably hard for younger people to imagine. I remember one time we were in a meeting and somebody asked how long we had known each other. And do you remember what you said? You said that we have known each other so long that Stephanie called me once and said, do you know what? There's a new company where you can buy books on the internet. It's called Amazon.
That's right.
I remember. I'd never heard of such a thing. Yeah, but I think the point is, if somebody had said to us, in the day, you are going to be convinced to carry a tracking device everywhere you go that tracks what you say, what you buy, what you read, what kind of porn you watch. And then all that information is going to be sucked up and monetized so that you can be tracked and exploited in every single way. Oh, and by the way, you're going to also put devices in your home. So when you step away from your phone, you will have a device that listens to every single thing that you say and tracks all of that information. And that same device is going to work in your car and any other vehicle that you have. So you will be tracked with audio and sometimes video and location for every single moment of your life. And you are going to participate in this willingly, and you are going to enlist your children as soon as they are born. Yeah. We would have been like, oh, come on, that's ridiculous. I wouldn't buy that as a science fiction story.
You're crazy.
Right.
That's what would have been. Well, you mentioned twice now, you mentioned pornography. And it's apropos because, people don't know who are watching, but I'm working on my Substack now. And I took a break from excoriating the degenerates in high places under the rubric of the Epstein files. And one of the things I said, look, there are a bunch of things that I kind of think suck, but that everybody sort of tells me are pretty cool. And I just got to go along to get along. But at a certain point, I was like, is it me? Is it them? And I list about 8 things in this Substack I'm working on. And one of the things I mentioned is AI porn. Because depending on who's spinning it and who's selling it, this plan of using computer technology to create pornographic images, it's either a boon or a bane, right? You're no longer exploiting actual people, but then again, you're having your entertainment designed by people who have no idea what they're doing in regards to the nature of that entertainment. So, is there anything creepier than enjoying AI porn? I go, yeah, I guess falling in love with the AI porn that you're enjoying. I mean, how many spaces removed will we get before we finally say, you know what? We've gone collectively crazy. And of course, AI porn has gotten into AI criminal porn, which is, okay, I'm using AI to create sexual images of children. Have I broken any laws? And, there's a lot of carts with the horses way behind on this one because they haven't decided. Now they're, revenge porn. And so can I design porn that looks like somebody famous and make it and disseminate it for sale? Do I have to pay them a royalty? So there are a lot of unanswered questions connected to how we use this technology. But yeah, we are there. There doesn't seem, what is that great line from Apocalypse Now? He goes, who's in charge here? And the guy firing wildly into the night stops and looks at Martin Sheen and goes, ain't you? There's nobody. There's nobody controlling any of this. This is Silicon Valley companies,
I mean, part of the reason for that is that, you can basically buy the president and the people in power right now. And so, in any other arena, right, we have laws and regulations around food safety, seatbelts, how safe is the crib that you put a child in, car seats, airplane travel. We have so many things that regulate our safety. And we also regulate exposure to toxic ideas. Like there are age regulations before you can access some content, right? You can't sell cigarettes or booze to kids under a certain, people under a certain age. And the idea that something as powerful with potential devastating consequences as AI generated images would be unchecked, that there would be no regulatory or oversight or guidelines at all is also, I mean, we need to name that is a function of what's happening. You give enough money to this administration, apparently, and then you can be unchecked. But I think it's also important. I want to go back because, it's funny because I always think about this. Like sometimes we do talk about politics and the political situation and the world, and I don't want to pretend that doesn't exist. But I also feel like, maybe people come here so they can think about something else a little bit. And so I do want to get back to the idea of like, that some of the fundamental problems with thinking that people will respond to formulas, right? Even though we have shown the influence that algorithms can have on our life, we are not algorithms. And I think that there's a couple of things that underlie the way in which we will use formulas that I think it would be useful to unpack, right? So the first one is the fact that formulas sometimes work. So saying to people, if you save money and you start saving young, even small amounts, you can increase your chance of having a healthy, financially stable retirement, right? So save money now, you'll have a stable retirement. Okay. For many people, that will work. So to make decisions on that is where you get into trouble. Right? To say, well, we don't really need to have Social Security. We don't really need to have basic income. What we need to do is we need to convince people to save more rather than recognizing that, like, this is where life intervenes. This is where people are not, mechanical. So, for example, you and I are the same age. I mean, I think our families, we come from families that are relatively similar and where they fall on the socioeconomic, like, not broke, not rich. Neither one of us are getting like big ass inheritances or using trust funds. We both worked really hard. You are retired, living in a lovely home in Spain. I will be working until I'm 70. And part of the reason for that is that we both worked hard. We made good decisions, but there were systemic life events that happened to me that impacted, chief among them, I had a teenager who was in a car accident and suffered devastating health issues, and they cost me a ton of money.
I would have gone back before then.
To
marrying an asshole. But that's just my memory here.
Well, but I mean, I think that is also something else. This idea of like start saving early. It's like, okay, so I'm in my 20s. I'm divorced. The amount of money that I get for child support doesn't even cover child care, let alone braces and rent and food and all of those things. And so there were many, I mean, in the early days, I've talked about this many times, there were times where I was like, and how am I going to feed these children? And how am I going to pay the rent? And I can probably drive with a car that has no
Yeah.
like literally, like I looked
Yep.
down at this
Yep.
rusted out VW and
Yep.
saw the road below me.
I had one of those. It felt like driving a Flintstone mobile.
Right.
You know?
And the idea
Yeah.
of like, and the reality is many people in this country don't even have enough money in savings to fix a car or have emergency dental work. Right.
Right.
And the idea, the privilege of saying, I'm going to put aside even $500 a month for retirement when you can't pay your bills and you're going to get your electricity turned off. That's a fairy tale. And so recognizing that, yes, the first part of the equation can be useful. Of course, if you have the opportunity to save money for emergency savings, for, difficulties to buy a house, to whatever, but recognize that many people are not going to be able to have that. And so the formula doesn't work. And I think the problem is when, as I said, we start making political decisions about the formula and then blame the individual rather than look, the notion that people who are poor because they're not working hard.
Yeah. I remember talking about the Trump thing, and I remember saying that, telling somebody who was a MAGA person, I said, I don't, Trump is not lying to me. And the guy goes, "Oh, you're coming over to our side." I go, "No, I'm not a fan and I'm not a supporter. So I don't believe him when he lies." Or rather, when he lies, I choose not to believe him.
Right.
He's lying to you guys. Oh, no, he's not. He really cares about the American people. Well, does he? So in the fullness of time, maybe get those numbers down from 27%. But I'm hoping that my friends and loved ones who live in America won't be sitting in piles of rubble when they come to that conclusion, which, has happened in other countries at other times.
Right. And this is the idea of like recognizing, I think the formulas are a way for us to pretend that we have control.
Yeah.
We have
to do a lot of pretending, because these formulas and algorithms that drive these devices that we're talking about, we're not Luddites. We use these devices, but these are the same ones that we have faith in when we get through the doors of that 747 and say, "Oh, I'm going to fly off for the weekend and do something," which of course I think about during the entirety of the flight. I can't believe I'm trusting my life to the computer that flies this plane. My God.
Yeah, but again, I mean, people need to know who are listening that neither Eugene nor I are happy travelers.
Right.
Being in a hurtling tube of, tin in the sky is not our favorite place to be. But I think what we need to do is interrogate the fundamental notion, which is that we can control other people or even ourselves through formulas, and to recognize that can't happen. And then I think the other thing, particularly in a business context, to keep in mind, I often say to my clients, what is the problem we're trying to solve?
Right.
And frequently, the problem they think they are trying to solve is not actually the problem they're trying to solve. So, for example, if I am brought into a workplace and told by the CEO that this particular team is not working effectively, and that if that CEO were to suggest to me, I think you need to do an assessment, and I think you need to look at this framework, and you need to decide, where they fall on different quadrants and get them to go from here to there. That sort of formula may have validity. But if I walk in and see that the reason this team isn't performing is that their supervisor is a bully and a tyrant, then you're never going to fix a dysfunctional team by employing all sorts of strategies and frameworks and formulas if you don't deal with the fact that they're terrified of their boss.
It's an interesting scenario you painted there. I wonder if we have any real world corollaries to something like that. Maybe we could have on Christy Nome as a guest. Maybe she could, if she's busy killing dogs, maybe you could get in there.
And I think that's the challenge, right? Is that these formulas are wielded as if they're going to work. And it really is, it's magical thinking, right? Like Go ahead. What were you going to say?
I see something that you said before, though. To mirror that, I think that's the intended outcome, right? I mean, this is management theory in America. You hire all of these buffers until I mean, Gnome was a buffer, and when it was inconvenient to have that as a buffer, she's gotten rid of it. Now there's another buffer, right? There's a whole level of buffers. There's a great scene from Godfather Part 2 because were you a button man? Yeah, as a button man, but there were lots of buffers. Yes, there are buffers. I mean, that's why you hire people. So when it comes down to, you can reorg and get rid of those people.
Yes
maybe.
and no. I mean, I think that is true in a large, in many arenas. Right. What I can say from my experience, right? So, and first of all, people who want buffers and people who are looking for bullshit are not people who are hiring me. I am not the person you bring in to help your team if you want to, live in some sort of fantasy land. So I do think, and I do see people who are running businesses, and these are not huge corporations. These are not like global advertising conglomerates, but I see people who genuinely want to work more effectively, who really do have good intent. And there are yes, we talk about bad bosses, but there are people who want to be better leaders, or maybe they just want their company to make more money or be more effective in what it is that they're doing. And a lot of them, well-meaning, will get caught up in this formula idea, right? They will get caught up in this notion of like, it's, if X equals Y, then this will happen and these will be the outcomes. And they unfortunately will spend a lot of money. I mean, I get very frustrated because there are a lot of coaches and consultants who come in and say, here's the magic formula. And I'll have clients come to me after they've spent so much money with other people who have the magic formula. And a lot of times I won't get business because I will say the truth, which is there is no magic formula. Right? And they're like, no, I want the magic formula.
Well, you have to say magic formula for what? Like, this is a magic formula for guaranteeing that I have a comfortable retirement. Exactly. I don't know if it's going to help your company or not. I mean, I had a moment like that with a surgeon, and I said, bravely, at least if I have this surgery, it'll return, it get me to 100%. Guy goes, I don't say that. I go, 80%. He goes, I make no promises. I appreciated his candor and his honesty. No promises. Great. I'm not having the surgery then. I got no promises now, and I can walk. I'm not going to take a chance on not walking because you want a yacht, So, and
I think that one fundamental thing that I do want to say before we end is that, with all of the hand-wringing about AI, much of which I think is justified, if only to look at the economic impact of these data centers on the world. Like, we need to consider that. But one of the things, and people say this a lot, I mean, I'm an executive coach, and people have been saying for years that executive coaching is going to go away because why would I pay you, Stephanie, when I can get ChatGPT to tell me these things? Because I fundamentally believe that there is something that happens when one person is talking in real time to another person, two human beings, even if we're talking over a screen. There is an awareness, there is a magic in the attention that one person pays to another that is not replicable. And maybe there are people who don't want that attention. They don't want somebody to listen to them and see them and be present to them. But I think it's the same thing. I mean, there are plenty of young people who are not having sex the way that other generations are. And some people say, oh, that's because of pornography, or that's because of this, that, or the next thing. And I believe that there are people who would, as you say, prefer to have a romantic relationship with AI, or some sort of, or whatever the semaculum, whatever that word is, whatever the ersatz being is. And again, maybe this is an older generation thing, but we both know there's something that happens when one person is with another person in a sexual situation that cannot be replicated by a machine or a bot. And I believe that there are always going to be people who are going to want the real rather than the ersatz.
Yeah. And, they did an interesting experiment, right? Because about nitrogen and hydrogen and these chemicals, right? And somebody said, well, look at this steak. this steak we've analyzed it. It's got hydrogen. It's got this. So why don't we just take those same chemicals that are in the steak and see if we can make it? And they did. They took those chemicals and they put them in the right order. And they go, here, it's the steak that we made. It doesn't taste like steak, right? They figured that out. The food industry figured out that we could look exactly and copy it exactly, and it still will not taste like steak. There is an X factor that comes from real things interacting with real things. Sun, grass that's eaten, feedlots, the cattle, what it does with its day, and that you just can't. It's not just as easy as making some chemicals in a pan.
I think it's the same thing with any human interaction, right? And I think it's the same thing at work. You work with people and you have interactions that involve you as human beings, which means there's a intellectual, psychological, physiological, there's a complex web of connections that I think people are going to continue to value. So that's about all we have time for. If you have some suggestions for topics for us that you want us to talk about, if you have questions for us, we're always happy to answer them. WTF@badbossbrief.com. I read and respond to every single email that comes in. WTF@badbossbrief.com. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Thanks, everybody.
Adios.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Bad Boss Brief podcast with your host, Eugene S. Robinson and Stephanie Payrollo. You can check out more of their work by visiting spayrollo.substack.com for Stephanie and eugenesrobinson.substack.com for Eugene. You can also find Eugene at Mr. Sleep 3, that's the number 3, on Insta. Reach out with your questions, concerns, work case situations, or suggestions to us at WTF@badbossbrief.com. Stephanie will personally answer every single submission. Be sure to join us at badbossbrief.substack.com every other Wednesday for new episodes of Bad Boss Brief so you can gain further insights into your workplace environments. Until next time, don't be an asshole at work.